Hey everyone, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're going to unpack the hidden architecture of modern media, and more importantly, how it's directly impacting your mind right now. We're exploring some truly fascinating source material that is going to completely reframe how you look at the information you consume every single day. We're talking the science of consciousness, the history of mass broadcasting, and how your attention is literally being managed.
I want you to think really deeply about this for a second. Are you actually choosing your reality? Or are you just tuning into a broadcast? It's a pretty provocative question, right? Because the source material suggests that a lot of what we consider our own independent thoughts or our natural reactions to the world might actually be the result of a highly engineered attention apparatus. The info we're digging into today challenges the whole foundation of how we interact with our screens, the media, and honestly, even each other.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. Shadows on the wall. 2. The subconscious radio receiver. 3. The map of consciousness. And 4. Escaping the cave. Section 1. Shadows on the wall. Let's start by looking at the overarching problem, which is the idea that our modern media landscape is basically a carefully constructed theater. Democrat versus Republican, Coke versus Pepsi, war versus anti-war. What you're seeing here is the Hegelian dialectic in full swing. According to our sources, these are literally false binaries projected onto the wall of our modern Plato's cave. They are specifically tailored to polarize people into extreme camps. You see, the system totally relies on this dualistic conflict. It hides the underlying apparatus by making us fight over the shadows on the wall, which completely distracts us from looking around and seeing who is actually casting those shadows. And it's crucial to impartially observe here that participating in these polarized extremes, regardless of which side you're on, merely feeds the system.
Now, this brings us to a concept that sounds straight out of a spy novel, but our research grounds it in actual, documented history. We're talking about soft MK Ultra. It's basically the use of mass broadcasting to subtly synchronize mass psychology. And guys, this is heavily utilized in almost any commercial media shown nowadays. We're talking the classic sex, drugs, and rock and roll paradigm. The sources emphasize that you need to fiercely guard your exposure to this kind of media. Why? Well, because your subconscious mind is essentially a blank tape recorder. It accepts anything it is exposed to as absolute truth. When you passively sit there and consume commercial media, you are literally allowing this soft entrainment to sync up your psychology with whatever narrative they happen to be broadcasting.
So how did we even get here? To figure that out, we have to look at the origins of this attention apparatus. Historically, there was this massive shift from managing physical crowds, like at fairs and circuses, to managing psychological audiences through radio. Early researchers at places like the Tavistock Institute and the Frankfurt School actually studied how the human nervous system reacts to audio stimuli. A prime example from the sources is the famous 1938 War of the Worlds radio broadcast. That was essentially the ultimate field test. It proved, beyond a doubt, that a centralized broadcast could successfully override a person's physical observation with a scripted, completely fictional mental narrative. They learned very early on how to induce these highly receptive, suggestible states in the masses.
Section 2. The subconscious radio receiver.
So we know the external broadcast exists, but how does it actually interface with your internal psychology? Alongside the research of Dr. Pim van Lommel, we discovered that consciousness acts a whole lot like a radio. Your brain tunes into frequencies, but it doesn't actually create the program. Think about it. Destroying a physical radio doesn't destroy the radio waves floating in the air, right? In the same way, neuronal activation in the brain merely reflects the reception of consciousness, not the production of it. Your brain is a receiver of electromagnetic information fields, and as we just talked about, an unprotected subconscious simply accepts the loudest external broadcast as its reality.
And this leads us straight into the identification process. Our sources describe how the sovereign individual, the living, breathing human, is tricked into identifying with a legal ego, a societal mask, or some corporate fiction. The word identification literally means the process of making the same. So when you strongly identify with a political label, your consumer preferences, or your societal status, you are actively tethering your sovereign consciousness to a man-made, lower-frequency system. You go from having your own independent standing to falling right under the jurisdiction of the broadcaster.
Section 3. The map of consciousness.
To really grasp how this manipulation works, we need a way to measure it. Enter the remarkable work of Dr. David R. Hawkins. Think of his map of consciousness like a voltage meter for the entire human experience. He calibrated different states of human consciousness on a logarithmic scale. Now look closely here. Notice how the realms of broadcasting, propaganda, and ego all calibrate below the level of 200. This is what he calls the realm of force, and it's characterized by fear,
anger, desire, guilt, and pride. The modern media apparatus is entirely designed to keep people locked into these lowest levels. It wants to keep you in a state of constant emotional reaction so you can't access the higher levels of power, like courage, reason, and peace.
That number right there, 200, is the absolute critical demarcation point on the Hawkins scale. It's the borderline that separates the destructive, false energies of force from the constructive, true energies of power. Basically, everything below 200 weakens you, everything above 200 strengthens you. So that entire Hegelian dialectic we discussed earlier, the constant outrage, the fear-mongering, the endless political theater, it is precisely engineered to prevent your consciousness from crossing this exact numerical threshold.
But here's the uncomfortable truth. The system needs our compliance to work. Look at these everyday habits. These are the things people desperately use to stay unconscious. The sources point out that people are often terrified of just sitting and facing themselves. So what do? We flick on the TV the exact minute we walk into a room, instantly subjecting ourselves to the commercial broadcast. We endlessly scroll to avoid even a single moment of silence. The media literally programs us to be chronic injustice collectors, always hunting for a reason to be outraged at the other side of that false binary. These everyday habits are exactly what keep the data chokehold firmly in place.
Section 4. Escaping the cave.
Okay, so we know the trap. How do we actually break the programming? The sources offer a very practical, actionable solution called the letting go technique. For beginners out there, here is exactly how you start applying it. Step 1. Recognize the media trigger. When you see a news story that's clearly designed to make you furious at a political rival, realize in that moment that it's just a shadow on the wall. Step 2. Allow yourself to feel the physiological emotion, the anger or the fear, but do it without acting on it, expressing it, or burying it. Just let the energy run its course in your body. And step 3, let go of your attachment to the polarity. You have to surrender the need to be right or to participate in the dialectic. A perfect beginner example, just turn off the TV playing in the background, or consciously choose not to leave an angry comment on a polarizing social media post. You escape the cave by literally just stopping playing the game.
When you practice this letting go technique, you actively move your consciousness from force up into power. And honestly, this is the big secret the apparatus absolutely does not want you to know. When you elevate your frequency above that 200 mark, the entire control system effectively loses its connection to your soul. You simply stop being a blank tape recorder for their fear. You reclaim your mental sovereignty because their low-frequency broadcast just doesn't resonate with your state of being anymore.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material. It's such a profound concept. It reminds us that true peace is strictly an inner decision. All that chaos we see in the global geopolitical landscape, it's often just the final resistance of the collective human ego being projected onto the world stage. But when you raise your own consciousness, when you actively let go of your own inner fear, anger, and desire, you stop projecting that ego outward. You literally change the world by changing the receiver, which is your own mind.
I want to leave you with this one final powerful thought. If the endless commercial media cycle, the strict political binaries, and the manufactured outrage are all just reflections of a collective lower ego, are you finally ready to change the channel? I challenge you to step out of the shadows, guard your exposure to the digital cave, and start exploring the higher, infinitely more powerful levels of your own consciousness. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I really hope this completely changes how you view the broadcast.